Uh, Thank you, first of all, for participating in BAYWORK's training buffet and for joining us in this panel today. It's entitled Training the Workforce of Tomorrow. And I want to start by acknowledging that this is National Apprenticeship Week, so it's an appropriate time to be talking about this subject. For those of you who are not familiar with BAYWORK, we're a workforce consortium of 44 water and wastewater utilities in the greater Bay Area and beyond. And we provide free workshops and resources for all employees of water and wastewater utilities. And you can visit us on our website at baywork.org, where we've got a whole wealth of information, both for current employees and job seekers. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. You've all been muted to minimize any accidental disruptions, but we really encourage you to put questions and comments in the chat, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. You may also want to adjust your view so that you can see the person speaking very clearly. And you can do that by going to the view icon in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom screen and choosing speaker view. Want to let you know that this webinar is also being recorded and it will be posted on the BAYWORK website once it's been edited. And we really want to get your feedback at the end of this thing. So we're going to post in the chat a link to a very short survey. So please do open it before you leave the webinar. But if you don't, we will also email you the link this afternoon as well. So today we're going to hear from 3 people who have been directly involved in training and apprenticeship in particular. And 2 of our panel were trained originally as apprentices. All 3 have experience in supervision of apprentices or administration of apprenticeships. Our focus will be on the job training of skilled operations and maintenance staff, as those are the big pain points for most of our organizations. Most of our utilities are facing real challenges as we anticipate the retirement of so many experienced staff at a time when there's a lack of experienced candidates for those jobs, and experience is the key word. So in order to attract a younger generation of workers, we need to find a way to give them the on-the-job experience that they'll need. So today we'll be talking about various programs, including apprenticeship, that can give that one-on-one experience. I want to take just a moment to define our terms before we start. So by apprenticeship, we mean a structured training program that requires specified classroom instruction, plus on-the-job training and evaluation to ensure that apprentices master the full range of skills needed in that occupation. And most apprenticeships are registered with either the state or federal government. Apprenticeship is not the norm in the water sector, I have to say, but we are seeing more and more agencies across the country adopting this form of training. Internship is a much looser term. Internships can be shorter or longer. They may not require any specific classroom instruction. And in most cases, internship does not give someone the complete range of technical skills and on-the-job experience needed for the job, but it does give them valuable exposure to the work, an opportunity to see the work being done, and an opportunity to make connections with people in the industry. And also in many cases, again, not all, but in many cases, there is no direct pathway from internship to regular employment. Interns kind of tend to go away, and we hope that someday they'll come back. So I want to start by asking our speakers to introduce themselves and tell us where you work, what your job is, but also say a word about your past exposure to apprenticeship. So let's start with you, Jonathan.
Okay, good morning. Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Burgess. I work for Valley Water, or what's formerly known as the Santa Clara Valley Water District. I'm the utility maintenance manager over on the treatment side of the process. And I've got about, working for me, we have 3 different skilled trades folks. We have electricians, control systems, technicians, and pipeline mechanics that work for us. My experience with apprenticeships, well, I went through one myself in a lifetime before I got into the water business. I used to work in auto manufacturing. And so I went through a joint apprenticeship program with New United Motors in Fremont and the UAW, where I became a basically an electrician / general maintenance technician, and everything else that kind of fell in between that they required of their general maintenance staff. We pretty much learned everything from machining, how to make machine tools, welding, rebuilding pumps, and also working on substations and substation maintenance and robotics and automation and PLC programming. I mean, we did everything. So it was a pretty comprehensive apprenticeship. And I had a lot of fun, actually. It took about 4.5 years, I think, from start to finish to get all the way through the program. Yeah.
Great. All right. Robert.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Scott, and I also Valley Water. And I also went through the same apprenticeship that Jonathan went through in the auto industry, and all the things that he named. I also had the opportunity to get into, once I graduated from the apprenticeship program, to get into our work in our training department, and eventually became the union representative of all our skilled trade staff, which also made me the chair of our joint apprenticeship committee. And so from doing that, we were handling pre-apprenticeship, the pre-apprenticeship program, as well as selecting the apprentices, and also providing the training for the apprentices and oversight of the apprentices and administration and all that kind of stuff. And I finished the same program that Jonathan did. It was basically electromechanic apprenticeship program. And as Jonathan said, we've learned all types of fields, from pneumatics, hydraulics, to welding and machining, electrical, and so forth. And so that's a nutshell of it. For now, I presently work at Valley Water as a technical training program administrator. And so we're trying to make sure that our staff have all the knowledge, skills, and abilities they need to do their jobs.
Thank you, Robert. And Scott, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Scott Goodell. I'm the program manager for IEWorks. And IEWorks is a similar regional training consortium of water and wastewater utilities in the Inland Empire, which comprises San Bernardino and Riverside County in Southern California. And we're sort of just getting started with our work on apprenticeship in our region. And I have a background in healthcare apprenticeships. I've started working with a few big employers, building multi-employer apprenticeship programs in the OR setting, so surgical technology and sterile processing, which is similar but different, and something new that really the industry wasn't taking advantage of. So I have that sort of background in building those programs to meet the needs of the workforce, and kind of going through it with people that have never done it before and really were a little skeptical of it. So it's exciting work, and I'm happy to be here and share what I know.
Thank you, Scott. I want to start our panel off with just a very general question. What do you think our utilities need to do to ensure that we have the adequate pipeline of future workers that we're not already doing? I don't know, Robert, do you want to start us off on that? Just a general overall view.
Yes. My first thought is to think of something that Jonathan has started doing that we weren't doing, to let him, I won't steal his thunder on that. But I thought about that in answering this question. But I think that we need to start with our why. And I think selling the why is one of the biggest issues, because we tend to think budget, we tend to think time, but we don't think about how we can take those things and make our future better. And so it requires the investment to understand the why deep enough, and the investment up front to create the ideal worker that you're looking for in whatever discipline it is. And so I don't think we're thinking that way. We're thinking more so right now. And so we're not thinking future enough and thinking the investment that it takes to provide what we need for the future. So I'm going to stop there, and then I'm sure that I'll have some other comments, but I'll let my other panelists speak on it.
All right. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I guess I can pick up where Robert left off. And he's absolutely right, is that we tend to look at the now, and we tend to look at what our needs are, like for today, tomorrow, maybe through the week. But as the hiring managers, it's real difficult to find people that are of high enough skilled trades where they can walk in off the streets. You can hand them your work orders and they can just get right to work, you know, maybe show them around a little bit and show them where your resources are. But put them right to work without very little training. It just doesn't happen. So you're always going to be training folks anyway. So if you're going to make that training investment, you might as well just start folks from the beginning, because your overall quality of your product, I don't want to call it product because people aren't products, but you know, what you're going to end up getting in the long run through your own training programs is going to be of much higher quality. And for a lot of reasons we'll probably get to a little bit more in this presentation. But some of the challenges, and if there's one takeaway that if for administrators or managers that are out there that are thinking about putting together kind of an apprenticeship program or training program, is that you have to instill that commitment in not only yourself and your supervisors and your staff that are working for you, but you also need to get that commitment from the industry or whoever your organization's leaders are. I mean, the money, the budget, that's really the easy part. But when you start looking and showing people going, look, this is going to take us 4 or 5 years, and I'm quite possibly going to tie up 3 or 4 position codes within the organization, you know, people just start looking at like, well, is this going to be, you know, your leaders start looking, is this going to be worthwhile in the long run? So getting started is probably the hardest part, but I think in the long run, when you look back and you look at the quality of the work that you're getting, and you look at the quality of the people who are becoming promoted, and you look at the quality of your overall culture and workforce, you're going to notice a vast improvement if you stick around long enough to see that slug of new hires work their way through the organization and graduate on the other end.
Thank you. Scott, anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I think in my role as a program manager and meeting with multiple utilities, I think that, you know, as far as, you know, having an adequate pipeline, it's a little scary to really look at the numbers of retirements that are coming up. And, you know, at some point, it's really going to, I think, hit where you're going to have agencies really starting to do more of what they've done in the past, of sort of poaching workers from other agencies. And then what that impact could be on smaller agencies as well. We have some smaller mutual water companies that joined IEWorks, and you know, particularly for them, they often lose their workers to some of the larger agencies that are able to, you know, pay better. So ensuring that there's an adequate number, right, of folks that are trained up and ready to start a job, because as you mentioned, there isn't typically folks don't have that experience coming out of a program, you know, whatever program they came out of or whatever coursework they've taken, they don't have that on-the-job training experience. So by providing that on-the-job training opportunities overall, it's going to help everybody in the long run by having a greater pool of workers that are, you know, ready to take on those jobs as folks move around, as folks retire, as folks move to new areas.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate you pointing out that apprenticeship at some agencies benefits all agencies by increasing the pool. I wanted to come back to your actual experience as apprentices, Jonathan and Robert, and ask you especially how effective was the training you received, due to the fact that you were we were both learning in the classroom and on the job, and how would you compare that experience to other kinds of training? I don't know if one of you wants to jump in on that.
Yeah, I'll start on that. The quick answer is it was very effective. So effective, it's the foundation to my present job that I'm doing today. Apprenticeship, is the foundation that I built my career on, and it changed my life. That's how effective it was. And there's a whole lot I can say about all of that. But if it wasn't for the apprenticeship I attended, I wouldn't be in the position that I am in today and what I'm doing today. But the thing that made it great was, in comparison to other trainings, is that the ability to actually see and the opportunity to do that. One of the things that our program that I thought was highly effective is that the first 6 months of being in the program, all we did was train. We were just in the training center the whole first 6 months, because they wanted us to get a base knowledge that we could build on, a base experience, and also to get into the pace of doing maintenance. Because we had come from the production line and the pace was a lot faster. And so they needed to slow us down for us to start thinking differently and to kind of reprogram the way we look at things. And it worked effectively. I couldn't walk through a grocery store without looking up at the piping and checking out the conduit runs and whatever else. I go into a building now, I look at the building than I did before. And so it slowed us down to think about things differently and to start to think safety and innovatively, and see how the mechanics behind things was allowing to the outputs for things to work the way that they were working. And then the fact that we were in a cohort was extremely important, because now we can not only learn from the instructors and the instruction receiving and our experiences, but we can also now learn from the experiences of those in our cohort, and we would talk and share. And then some of us were better or at certain things than others, and so we would learn and help and teach each other. It was highly effective. And so, and those components, I think, were critical to make it so impactful. And again, I would say, it really changed the course of my life.
Yeah, I have to agree with Robert. I don't know, anybody who's ever worked on a production line probably could also empathize with us that it's not that fun, it's kind of mind numbing. But I like how you pointed out that I slow down, because I'll never forget that first day we're all sitting in there. And if you can imagine, we're used to running 8 to 10 hours a day nonstop, just constant move. And then you sit us down in a classroom for 6 months, and everybody's in there moving around, shaking, trying to sit still. But it was extremely effective, because it did slow us down, and it did make us start thinking about things a little more kind of holistically, and kind of considering, what the ramifications of our actions could be, because we could quite possibly kill ourselves in the line of work that we were about to get into. So it was super important. Some of the, to answer your question directly, I mean, how effective was it? I mean, I thought the training was priceless, really. And it did set the foundation for a career that I've been in for, going on 25 years now. And I always let my kids know, or any of the people that come through our programs here, let them know, is that, you go through the apprenticeship. It's much like a college level degree. It's something that you've earned. You've worked through a standardized process that's administered, and you're meeting those minimum requirements of that process. And not only that, you're showing your aptitude, and you're proving that aptitude in your work. And they give you a card, and nobody can take that card away from you once you have that card. And it says that, you're an electrician, you're a mechanic, you're an electromechanical technician or instrument tech, whatever you are. And you will always have a job, no matter where you go. And I like to give the example, and it really kind of came clear to me is after post-apprenticeship, I traveled a little bit for my employer. And, you know, we're here in Fremont, California, and we have all these machines and stuff, and we think we're the only manufacturer in the world that has these particular machines. But, you know, travel over to Japan, they had the exact same machines. It was just, they had different languages labeling the exact same buttons and everything. And so you knew how to fix their machines over in Japan. You didn't even need to really be part of Japanese culture to understand that, right? And so when you still start digging into that a little deeper, it becomes worldwide. You meet people that come from South Africa, you meet people that come from India, people that would come from France or any of the other European Union countries, and they were all using the same equipment. So really that puts it into perspective. It's like there is no limit of what you can do in this world once you actually have that skill under your belt. You can take it anywhere. Something else that I want to point out is the relationships and the professional network. That's the cohort that Robert was talking about. You know, these people these relationships that you build, you're with the same group of people for, you know, 4 or 5 years that in this cohort that you build, and you're drawing off of that for the rest of your life. You know, Robert and I's relationships are a good example. You know, I was Robert's apprentice for a while. And you know, he's been like a gum on my shoe. He just he's sticking right there. Can't seem to outrun him. But also on the same note, you know, I make fun, but I want to let everybody know that I'm really grateful for Robert, because he was the man that handed me my journeyman card, and so that was a big day. And so I really appreciate that and all the work that he did to make sure that that card became a reality for me. And last but not least, the point that I want to put out there, and its difference from internships is you get paid really well to be an apprentice. And as you progress through the apprenticeship, usually your pay increases or commensurate to that progression. So yeah, that's not something that's a lot of people are really trying to get into some apprentices, especially in the private sector. I think our local IBEW just processed 1,000 prospective apprentices this summer. So there's a lot of interest in it, a lot of money to be made.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I think some of the things you spoke to in terms of the pay, but also the networking and the cohesion in your group, they all speak to the retention of apprentices. And what we're seeing nationally is that I think about 93% of apprentices are retained by their employer after they complete the program. So it's a strong factor in that retention. And it's clear that apprentices get a lot out of apprenticeship. I want to talk for a second about what employers get out of it. And we know that at the end of the process, the employer gets a fully trained worker who's familiar with their processes. But the process might take anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 years. And in talking to employers, sometimes they tend to look at it as if that 4 years is all investment on their part and no return. And so I'd want to ask any of you three to talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of what the employer gets back in terms of productivity during the apprentice's tenure as an apprentice. I know the first, like Robert said, the first 6 months were, pretty much in the classroom, probably, not any significant productivity there. But after that point, what have you seen?
Well, there's a whole bunch that I think we all can say on this, but I'll say a couple things. One of the things that I noticed almost immediately after we finished the 6 months and hit the floor, I mean, I noticed it personally, it probably happened before then, I just wasn't on the floor to notice it, was it immediately caused the journey people to get sharper. It was automatic. Now that they know they got someone they're training, they now have to know whatever I tell them, I got to tell them the right thing. And granted, there was a lot we didn't know, but because we spent the 6 months getting foundational knowledge, there was things that we did know. And so we could talk the language to some extent, but it made them sharper. It made them be more cognizant of what they were doing and what they were saying. and what they were conveying to us. So one of the things the agency get is a sharper employee, the ones who've already been professionals. It makes them be on their P's and Q's a little more. So that is an automatic benefit right away. And so I'm gonna leave it there, and I'll maybe come back and comment on it again and let the others talk.
Good. Any other comments?
Yeah, just a few. I think we're going to touch on this a little bit more in the next question. But I think where I've seen some feedback from some employers around apprenticeship is it kind of it makes them go through a process of reevaluating their training and the their own competencies, things maybe that might have not been looked at for years. They get reevaluated. So it provides that opportunity to sort of go through that again and re-update the way training occurs. And the other upside is around with the apprenticeship, which Jonathan mentioned. A mentorship is key. The journey worker's role in that. And in the programs that I've been involved in, there's been we've seen real benefit of investing in training the mentors and the supervisors and the apprentices, right? Of course, but just some of the skill sets that you need to be a good trainer. A lot of folks have a tremendous amount of knowledge. They can do everything blind, if you will. But maybe they don't have that teaching perspective or the framework around how to teach to different levels. So when to use sort of the show tell do method, when to use learning a methodology of a teach back method, and when someone is competent, how to evaluate that. So putting mentors through a training really has from what I have both experienced and heard from other apprenticeship programs. So we're leaning heavily on lessons learned from the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. They have a apprenticeship program in maintenance mechanic and electrician, and they've commented that just really having the value added of being able to improve your own staff internally in a more formal way, contributing to that process of what is this training going to go through, what are some things we want to teach, what is some really making something that really helps employees develop professionally and sort of improve their own skills on the job.
Thanks, Scott. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Oh, if you got something, go ahead. I can wait.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
So from an employer's perspective, employers get a whole lot more out of it than what it looks like. It is expensive, right, for employers because you're kind of tying up someone's time to train somebody else, and it's really a long duration program. But it's not 100%. It's more that it's kind of something that, I'm giving you this much in year one, and then I'm really spending this much time with you year two, this much time by year three, by year four, you're pretty much on your own, and years really 3 and 4, you're all by yourself typically. And so you realize those labor increases towards the end of that apprenticeship. But a couple things to point out, like in our previous life where Robert and I came from, the apprentices, as apprentices, we were required to rotate through an entire organization. So our organization we worked for was a 5,500 employee organization. I mean, the building was a mile long. So we had tons of departments in there. And as we got through that rotation, we became kind of priceless, right? We knew where all the resources were. We knew, across the plant, there was some guy over there that was really quiet, but he was an expert in, logic controllers or, robots or something like that. And so we had access to those resources. And so then upper management started grabbing hold of us. They wouldn't grab, they would look at the journeyman and say, keep working. And they would look at us and go get that guy over there, right? Or call them and see what kind of information you can get. And so we become these conduits. But also, what's more important is if you look back, apprentices are not something new, right? We may have gone to the wayside in recent years, in the 30, 40 years, because people looked at them being expensive and they would just rather hire people with all, their skills. But apprentices have been around forever. I mean, it used to be, yeah, I won't get into it, but the reason for it is because that's the primary succession development tool that most organizations or most small businesses have, is to hand that business or to hand that whatever special skill that you're bringing to the market to the next person. So it's really, we talk a lot about succession development, but we really I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. We can just draw off of what we already know and just put these programs into place. And then lastly, it's been our experience, we have a bit of an ad hoc training program here at Valley Water, but it's been our experience that our little ad hoc program that we have, the majority of the people that go through our little ad hoc training program actually come out the other end and quickly promote. So we've got people that became supervisors almost immediately. We have people that are maintenance planners now, and they almost always become senior level pretty quickly. So it's a good program because they're eager and energetic, and they go after it. You usually hire the go-getters in the apprenticeships.
Michael, I want to add to what Jonathan just said and tell a story also to go with this question. I want to commend Jonathan. He mentioned the ad hoc program. One of the things Jonathan did, and this sort of answers the first question as well, that in terms of what the agencies aren't doing that they could do. Jonathan on his own, under his own decision, decided that when he got an opening for his journey level positions, he would open it up not only for the journey level, but also for the sub journey level. He would say, he would post his announcement to either be a Tech 1 or a Tech 2. I'll fill this position with a Tech 1 or a Tech 2. What had been done before that, it was always filled with a Tech 2. And he made the sacrifice, I'll bring someone who doesn't have as much experience in, train them up. And this is the ad hoc training, part of the ad hoc training that he was talking about. And so I think that has transformed, partly of what transformed his department, because of the infusion of what we're talking about. When someone who's training comes in and what they infuse learning, hunger to learn, and I think that is priceless for an organization. I'm gonna tell this quick story. When I was an apprentice, I was in my fourth year. In our apprenticeship, in our fourth year, we would go to our final landing department. That's where we'll spend the last year of our program in our final place where we would finish once we graduate. So when I got there, I was intent upon, proving my worth. I was like, I want them to start seeing me as a journey person, not as an apprentice. And so, but I wasn't complete yet, but I wanted them to start looking at me that way. So when I got there and we had trouble calls, I was answering every trouble call I could, and my trouble call answering was becoming renowned. It was like they were hearing about me on the other shifts. I heard Robert answering a whole bunch of calls. And I was, because I was intent on answering these calls so I can prove my worth. And the journey person, so I went to one call and I went there, fixed it, was about to leave. And then a journey person showed up who I considered to be the best journey person in the entire plant. He was the most versatile, the sharpest, and able to do. I thought he was the best journeyman I had ever seen. And he shows up after I completed it. He showed up, I got the machine running, it was working. And so he started talking to me. And he says, I understand you answer a lot of calls. I said, yep, I do. And then he says, do you know about, he started naming some process and stuff over there in the area we were in. I said, you know about this? I said, nope, don't know about it. And then he said, what about this? I said, you know about this? I said, no, I don't know about that either. And then he said, well, do you know about this? I said, no, don't know about that either. And then he said, well, how are you answering all these calls? I said, because I know what a limit switch does. I know what a proximity switch does. I know what the motor does. I know things does. And from that, it was enough base for me to answer and fix the machine. So one of the things that I think is tremendous that came out of this is that when it was perceived that you needed to know all of this information to be effective, it got proven you didn't need to know that. You just need to have a hunger and understand the base and apply those principles, and you could do a whole lot more than it was perceived that you could do. Anyway, I tell that story to make that point.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks. So all three of you are engaged in various ways and at different stages in starting apprenticeship programs in the water sector. And I'm just curious if you would say a word or two about why apprenticeship, as opposed to, I mean, you've all said a lot of great things about apprenticeship, but we all know that most of our agencies don't use that tool to train. Why did you go in that direction? Anybody want to start us off?
I could talk about this all day, but I'll let some other people talk.
Yeah, I don't want to monopolize either. I could talk about it all day, but I'll get us started, and just maybe this will get us going. Apprenticeship, because it's one of the best ways to create the worker that you're looking for. That's specific to the organization, specific to your priorities, invested in your organization, and their commitment to the organization, organizational goals will be a lot stronger. And then you've trained them to be specifically the you are looking for. And so that is priceless. You can't hire that off the street. It doesn't happen. This is a self-developed ideal worker for your organization. That's one of the reasons why apprenticeship.
And Scott, I know you've been kind of actively talking to water and wastewater agencies in Southern California about apprenticeship. You know, what's your pitch and what's the reaction you get?
So the reaction's been pretty good. You know, it is something new, but there are some models that exist. Like I said, the Metropolitan Water District, which is, I think, the biggest water district in the country, has a program, and it's got you know, some real benefits to it, right? By being able to really, as Robert mentioned, I mean, there's things in the program that you get by linking the on-the-job training with the classroom training and sequencing that in a way that you're able to really teach those skills that your agency needs. So you're doing something that, you know, you're doing succession planning, and you're also training someone exactly how you want to be trained. You're you're specifying, you know, what coursework they need to take. You know, you're able to customize a program that really meets the need. You know, some of the and you know, overall, I think, as I mentioned, we've seen a lot of poaching going on within organizations, and really, you know, I think there's a sense that, you know, where does it fit in, you know, to the occupations, right? And we know that, like I mentioned, maintenance mechanics a big one, where we're seeing, you know, retirements, but we're also looking at, you know, I think agencies are particularly within the joint powers authorities in Southern California, they're used to working together on wastewater, so, you know, they share the burden. There's joint training opportunities because they're sharing, you know, facilities. You know, so there's a multi-agency thinking already with that. and it's a hard to fill position for them. So, there isn't a whole lot of wastewater operator positions, but when they are posted, you need somebody that is able to, you don't want to really wait to train them up, right? They need to be able to do the job right away. So really, I think, centralizing, right? Having the centralized approach to it. When those jobs become open, it's a hard to fill position. And, some of the training that, can take the requirements, right? The 1,800 hours that are required is a barrier. It's really a barrier for a lot of folks to be able to get those hours unless there's an OIT position posted, for folks just graduating or something. It's really hard for them to get it. Some agencies offer some, long-term part-time internships, but, it can take up to 2 years to complete to get those hours. So with the, we were looking at wastewater for one of our apprenticeships and, to really, reduce those barriers, help folks be able to get that training they need. And knowing, I think overall, the biggest thing is, like I mentioned, that, when you talk to agencies in a region, they all have this retirement risk that's going to hit at the same time. And, that I think is a driving factor as well. Knowing that, hey, we can't guarantee everyone a job at the end of this, we're going to train you, you're going to get paid. But we're pretty certain that there's going to be a regional need. We may have this need, but we know as a region, as an organization, as IEWorks, that we're going to having more, staff that's ready to go at the end of the program is going to help everybody.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, so to kind of expand a little bit on what everybody was saying is that we've talked a lot about what the employer really gets out of building a pipeline with apprentices, but there's a bit more, right? It's really, it shows that the employer from, like, I'll give you an example, right? So Robert mentioned that we put together an ad hoc program, where we're training people. And that was kind of out of necessity of a few different reasons. One, that the market was really tough to try and hire people meeting the skill set that we were looking for. The other is that we had internal processes that allowed managers to just go ahead and promote people kind of willy-nilly without any standardization. And that really does a disservice to certain, employees and the organizations alike, especially if, some of the managers don't really necessarily understand why they're promoting, right? It could be frustrating to other employees because they'll look at somebody who happens to be a good friend of the boss, and that person gets promoted way before they did, and they happen to produce more. So having an apprenticeship on board puts down a standardized process in which you're going to be training. You have minimum standards that you need to meet. And what's more is, typically, if you're going to call yourself an apprenticeship program, you're going to be governed by somebody other than your internal agency. There's always going to be somebody else there to make sure that you go through those proper checks and balances. And the commitment comes from the employer, at least from my perspective at the time, was if we can get rid of this ad hoc thing we have, we can put in place a strong apprenticeship program. Now we're giving our prospective journey people something tangible that they can take with them should something happen here, or should they relocate, right? They have something they can take with them. With an ad hoc programs that a lot of folks put together, you're kind of like, well, what is that? Who is Valley Water? What does that mean? What standards were you trained to, right? There's something more too that I think a lot of people tend to miss, and the reason why a lot of the local construction companies, construction unions put together apprenticeship programs is not only to attract more people into the union so they can be stronger, but it's out of necessity, right? And if you can use electricians or like steam fitters, or you take, any of the underground utilities companies and stuff, they have apprenticeships in place because those are dangerous utilities. And it's a commitment to the communities, because it looks really bad on not only the organizations, it looks bad on the unions who are actually backing these people to say, hey, that high tension line came down and it just, lit a fire, right? And it goes back to poor craftsmanship. So running these people through an apprenticeships at least ensures that the quality or these individuals were exposed to, you know, what proper quality looks like, what the safety standards look like, and what the expectations are going to be of, you know, of the, you know, the code regulators and inspectors and et cetera, et cetera. All right, so that's a definite commitment to the overall community.
Thank you. Well, speaking of the overall community, I want to focus for a second on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has been a big topic in our industry lately and throughout the country. And I think everyone in the industry realizes we need to diversify our skilled trades workforce. I'd like to hear from each of you a little bit about how apprenticeship can do that. But I wanted to start with you, Scott, because I know that down in the Inland Empire, you're pairing apprenticeship with pre-apprenticeship. And tell us how that can be an effective tool for increasing diversity and bringing in community members into these great jobs.
Yeah, so yeah, equity is we're laser focused on equity in the Inland Empire with our work. You know, I think the pre-apprenticeship is really, as you mentioned, the tool to get that equity. You know, I think one of the things that was mentioned, that Jonathan mentioned, through an apprenticeship program, you are really exposed to a lot. The agency is investing in you, and you through that investment in training, you're really getting a broad perspective of the work that's done, and that in turn allows folks to feel essentially, you know, have a little bit more job mobility perspectives, because they come from that well-rounded background. So, you know, again, with the Metropolitan example, a lot of the folks that have gone through their program are now in management positions. And, you know, so that's one thing that, you know, the apprenticeship program, by, you know, targeting it, you know, for disadvantaged workers or workers that aren't historically represented in the trade, such as women, you're sort of like, you want to build that diversity. This is a vehicle to do it. You know, it's proven, but it can also be, right, we've seen that some apprenticeship programs are, you know about them because someone that works at the agency told you about them, or your uncle works there. It's all, you know, a lot of it, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So pre-apprenticeship is really a vehicle to get folks from those communities you're really looking to target, to learn about apprenticeship and get the minimum qualifications they need to succeed in that program. So, you know, for example, a lot of women, there's clear evidence that shows that women have the skills to perform and excel in non-traditional jobs, but they might be unaware of the expectations and the working conditions. So, you know, having a pre-apprenticeship program that sets really this clear expectation, you know, it's important to prepare them for that, you know, the work culture, you know, getting site visits, getting introduced to the program. So not only going through some job readiness work, but really, you know, getting some exposure so they can see all the different trades that are within the program. And so that's really important, right? They're getting both those two things, sort of a mini internship to see how things work. They also address, you know, overcoming barriers. So, the supportive services are key. So we're integrating in, you know, all types of supportive services for folks. If they have, you know, a record that needs to be dealt with, you know, legal services to help people that were involved in justice served, you know, just, you know, support with childcare, support with transportation costs. I mean, I don't know what it is in Northern California, but I mean, it's like $4.50 or $4.75 a gallon right now. You know, someone with a truck, right, is they're going to be spending, you know, $100 a week easy. So, you know, being able to really target and diversify the training, really provide the soft skills. So, you know, that you need the job readiness training. And we're partnering with local community organizations in the Inland Empire that have been doing this work for a long time, that are embedded in those communities, that have those relationships. And, you know, we're partnering with them to develop that program. along with the, the workforce development boards and the community colleges to provide some of the technical training that it goes along with that pre-apprenticeship. So it's really a key vehicle. There's some excellent literature out there I'll put in the chat, especially looking at, highlighting opportunities for women, but really, it's something that I can't stress enough. That's really key if you want to build a program that isn't just going to replicate what the agencies look like now. If you're really trying to work in those communities and you want the communities to match the workers a little bit more, pre-apprenticeship is really that way to get folks knowledge about the industry and those basic skills and experience to say, yeah, this is a career I want to pursue. I know what's expected of me. And, I have some of those, basic, math skills. I'm getting a refresher on, stuff that I learned in the past that, it's been 20 years, right? So that folks are really set up to succeed in the program.
Thank you, Scott. Robert or Jonathan, any other words about particularly the diversity and equity aspect of apprenticeship?
Well, I'll say this, and it ties in because one of my journey persons that I work with was really instrumental in me purchasing my first home. Just the fact I was hanging out with him every day, and I was in my 20s, and he was encouraging me, Robert, you need to get a home, and no matter what, you need to do whatever you can, do this. And he shared his story with me. So the fact that he was in the position that I was going to be in, doing the same job I was doing, so our pay was very similar, everything. And he was older than me, and he was in the job I'm having. And that relationship, he was instrumental for me to get over the hurdles I had in becoming a homeowner. And that's not necessarily directly related to the work, but then it is related to the part that Jonathan mentioned about the networking. And so that networking, that relationship with him, for me, led to me becoming a homeowner, which to me leads to equity in our society. I mean, it was huge. And so I don't know, it just meant a lot. It meant a lot to me. That's why I wanted to add that part into it. And that is the non-technical side, the human side of it all.
Thank you. All right, I know we're running short on time. Jonathan, do you have anything to add?
No, I think I'm good. I think both Scott and Robert made excellent points, and we got time, so I'll just be quiet for the rest of the time.
Well, I just want to put in a plug for BAYWORK here, since we're sponsoring this, that we are in the process of developing a regional apprenticeship for instrumentation. And, Scott mentioned that Metropolitan Water has such an apprenticeship down south. And I think that it's often seen as something that only the largest agencies can afford to do. And by developing a regional program, we want to make it accessible to more and more agencies in the Bay Area. So with that, I guess I'll just ask if any of you have any last words, any things that you really wanted to say that you haven't had a chance to yet. All right.
Yeah, no, we can talk. We're trying to be respectful to each other.
Yeah.
And so I will say something, and I want to tie it into it, and we didn't kind of mention this too much, but I alluded to it with the home purchasing. Apprenticeship allows people opportunity that otherwise they may not get, to get a job where they can raise a family on, build their family up financially, acquire a skill set that they can use wherever they go, as Jonathan mentioned. And it's life-changing. And so the impetus is great for wanting to do it from a business perspective, from a humanitarian perspective, And then also for just a cultural perspective within your organization. One of the things that Jonathan and I experienced was the difference that the graduated apprentices made. Almost immediately, they shot to the hierarchy, near the top of the hierarchy of their performance in their departments upon graduation. It was almost immediate. It's like they were in the top rung of performers at the organization. And it's so the benefits of it, you can't even count it all, but it makes a cultural shift, a positive cultural shift. And I just want to infuse that into people's mind about, because we always talk about changing culture. You got these old traditions that we need to, come into the 21st century on issues. And we know that that's an issue in the water industry, but bringing in apprentices will help foster that.
Thank you. Scott, any last words?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to reiterate what you said about a regional apprenticeship program. I think what BAYWORK is, this evolution, right, in building a regional consortium, raising awareness about these opportunities. I mean, the next level is really providing those opportunities, and apprenticeship is really that vehicle to provide those opportunities in an equitable way if you do it right. And, I think it's really important to, understand that there is an investment being made, and it's an investment worth it. If you're an agency that hasn't, you've been doing things a certain way and you want to, go down, you think what you heard today, you like what you heard today, talk to Michael about that, because now's the time to get in and be a pioneer, being one of those trendsetters in the industry, trying a new way. There's very many different pipelines, different talent acquisition pipelines, internship, promoting people internally, and apprenticeship can be just another talent acquisition pipeline to really help people achieve, number one, those equity goals, and number two, a highly skilled workforce that training to the needs that your agency requires, right? Thinking long-term as well. So.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you all three of you. And thank you for being here to our participants. I want to remind you that we have in the chat a link to a survey. We're hoping you'll take a minute and fill it out. And I also want to challenge you, those of you, the great majority of you work at water and wastewater utilities. I challenge you to go back and talk to your coworkers about apprenticeship, begin to popularize the idea. And as Scott said, if you think there's interest or just a lot of questions, feel free to get in touch with me or with BAYWORK, and we'll come out and have that conversation with you. So with that, I wish you all a very good day. And I hope you'll stick around or come back in an hour for the last workshop of our series. Thanks very much, everybody.